This is Ashishar Bidekar and welcome to my podcast, The ARB Show. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Dilip Saraf. Dilip has been LinkedIn's top executive, career and life coach based in San Francisco Bay Area. He has worked with over 7,500 clients in over 23 countries in a wide variety of careers. This is his fifth career in 5 different industries. Dilip has helped clients uncover their genius and has packaged that as a verbal brand to position them as highly differentiated professionals in their own field. Dilip specializes in client reinvention with his unique approach and has codified his success through his own career transitions into a compelling framework that works in any field. His clients include movie stars to neurosurgeons to startup entrepreneurs and has helped countless everyday professionals manage their careers better. Dilip is the author of 5 books, nearly 600 blogs, and several YouTube videos. Dilip has been LinkedIn's top coach based on the number of client recommendations he has on his profile, which exceeds 300. Thank you, Dilip, for being a guest on the show. I look forward to hearing your insights on the top 5 tips in a tough job market. Over to you, Dilip.
Oh, thank you, Ashish. Thank you very much for inviting me on your famed broadcast. I've been watching your broadcast and telecast for a number of years, especially every time you post something. And I'm impressed by the guests you have, so I'm honored that you got me on your show. And thank you also for the introduction. So I think it's a good question. The job market is getting increasingly tougher, especially after the onset of AI and Gen AI and all related available resources, and a lot of people are getting laid off. So it's a good time to look at what available resources, strategies, and differentiators you have to stand out from the crowd. Because if you become part of the crowd in a crowded job market, especially when there's such large number of layoffs, it's difficult for you to get in front of somebody. And the whole idea is to get in front of somebody. So there are 5 tips. Those 5 tips are: the first one, I would say, and I'll elaborate on each one, but I just want to list them for your audience to understand where I'm going with this. The first one is show your differentiator. And what that means is, don't show that you're better than others. Show how different you are from others. That's a hard thing to do, and that's why you need to do it. That's the first thing. The second thing is target selective companies with research. Don't just shotgun it. By shotgunning, I mean you blast out every open job or whatever is in front of you, the same resume, and it gets lost in the noise. So that doesn't work in a crowded or tough job market. So target selective companies with research. I'm going to talk about that. That's the second item. The third item is learn how to do prospecting, which is different from responding to a job that's posted open. And I'll tell you what prospecting is. And I'll give you an example that worked really well as a use case so that you can see that it really works. The fourth item in this particular list of 5 tips that I have is leverage networking. How do you leverage networking? And I will talk about how LinkedIn is a resource, especially in these days in a tough job market. And there are other networking possibilities, and I'm going to talk about that as well. And the fifth one and the final one is, how do you advance your resume or your career without getting too focused on your next title and your next salary? Generally, when people go out looking for a job, they say, I was a director, I want to be a senior director. Or they will say, I was making 10K, I want to make 15K. And I want to talk about why that is not the best way to position yourself once you have a landing prospect, a landing possibility. So those are the 5 things I would like to talk about. So is that something that will interest your audience?
Definitely.
Global audience. I just want to make sure.
Right.
You don't have anything else I missed here.
No, this is very apt and very relevant. I would also request you to cover a certain trend which many people are saying is that this downturn or this job market shrinkage is slightly different from the earlier downturns. And many are attributing it to the rise of AI or maybe it's some economic condition, but the downturn is taking more long. So if you can also share your perspective on what are the key drivers for this downturn, and or maybe which sectors in your view are likely to be sunrise sectors and which sectors are likely to be dangerous or likely to have more tough areas, that would also be useful. So if you could cover that as well at whenever it's appropriate, that would be amazing.
So let's start with that, and then I'll repeat the 5 tips I said, because given the understanding of the job market and how it is shaping up strategically, would be a useful input for your audience, especially those who are looking for work or maybe those who are looking to go in a new direction or reinvent. So that's what I think I'm going to do, and then we'll cover this 5 up. So here is what is happening. There are 3 factors that have caused this recent upheaval in the job market. Number 1, going way back, I would say 5-6 years or even longer than that, companies like Google and Meta and Amazon and others, they are called Magnificent 7 now, and that Magnificent 7 includes Microsoft, Tesla, NVIDIA. That's what, plus the 4 before, makes it Magnificent 7. And so all of them, or most of them, had hired surplus because they knew the trend would continue. And the realization of that occurred about maybe 2.5 years ago. And Google had a massive layoff about 2 years ago, literally 20,000, 30,000 people. Amazon is laying off in large numbers as a result of that particular decision that they made. So that's one factor that has created somewhat lingering uncertainty and surplus in the job market. That's the first factor. The second factor is technologies are moving so fast that those who don't get on board with emerging technologies quickly fall behind in the job market. I'll give an example. About 5 years ago, blockchain and Bitcoin and all those things, smart contracts and all of those things kind of became into prominence. And those who are on top of those kinds of trends found easy to get into new jobs related to blockchain and those kind of areas. But now blockchain has become a commodity. In other words, people know blockchain, people don't even talk about it. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the same thing happened to cloud technology. So these trends are happening, but they are happening at a much faster pace now. And now the most recent one that the trend has really exploded is the Gen AI and AI-related applications and native AI especially. And so what that has done is the rate at which the 2.0 and 3.0 and 4.0, the difference between those, it's just phenomenal. Within a few weeks or few months, you have the next version of Gen AI, right? And the amount of knowledge or the inference available from these capabilities is exponentially higher than the previous one. So you can just imagine how much it affects people who are not on top of these trends, and they get paralyzed by it. And so that's what's going on in the job market. So that's one side of what I want to say, and that is not going to stop. So what is the antidote for that, right? That's part of your question. And so what you need to see is, if you have a natural ability to understand how these trends, these technologies, and these use cases come together to benefit a customer being either an enterprise, Fortune 500 company, or a small, medium business, or anybody who needs that capability to make them ahead of the market, to keep them ahead of the market. So if you have that ability, then you should jump on that bandwagon, I call it. It's a bandwagon effect. But many are not, especially those who are in the mid-40s, mid-50s, and so forth. They find it much more difficult to quickly retool themselves. And the people in their 20s can do it much faster, much better. and they're very agile in how they can quickly pivot around what the capabilities are. In that older age bracket, 40 plus, even 50 plus, need to find where there are opportunities in the job market. And in my view, especially with the automation, there are two things: intelligent automation, IA, and AI, those kind of going hand to hand, like they're complementary. So if you can not address that capability skill-wise in your resume, the opportunities for anything that involves human touch is where the growth is. So I'll give you an example. I have a client who got laid off from a media company, social media company, a year ago. And she's in her late 50s, and she said, I don't know where I can take this because I just don't feel capable of adopting these new technologies and so forth. So what we decided was, why not get into something that allows you to use your communication expertise, training expertise, and connecting with people to launch a new capability, new venture, new business that supports or improves a certain sector of the vertical that you are interested in. So what she loves animals, she loves dogs and so forth. She has dogs and pets and so forth. So she decided to see, when she goes to the veterinarian or pet doctor, what kind of a treatment she gets, and why in many times she doesn't get the treatment that they agreed to, or the dog comes back with a worse problem that the dog went in. She has seen this, encountered it. So she double-clicked on that, and she found that a lot of this happens because the technicians behind the counter, the people who actually treat the dog, not the veterinarian, but the technicians, like nurses, right, in a hospital, they don't communicate well, and they don't team up well. That's what she found out. And this is an actual story I'm telling you because this is very recent. So what she decided to do was develop a program that helps the technicians and the practice manager and others in that veterinary clinic, for example, as a pilot, as a use case, to do better, hand off better, to have better way to treat when they deliver the pet to the customer, to convey what has happened, what they found, and so forth. That was not happening before. So she developed a whole curriculum and a design and a training around that, and that had just taken off. And now she wants to expand it to a broader audience, including veterinarians, doctors themselves, and so forth. So the point I want to make is, this is just the most recent case.
Got it.
So the point I want to make is, what is not going to go away, regardless of how fast and how great technology evolution happens, what is not going to go away is the basic human experience, which includes healthcare, which includes hairdressing, which includes nail cutting, which includes massaging. You see what I'm saying?
Got it.
I'm just giving you an example of where. So if you are become allergic to technology development that's happening at such a fast pace, there is always something that's happening on the human side of it that you need to explore and take some risk and see if it'll work for you.
Got it.
And I can give many examples, but this is the most recent.
Yeah, this is very relevant because this also shows that how your client was able to show her differentiation, that her skills in communications, in program management, in terms of understanding client requirement, and she made that as a passion.
But the funny thing is, I want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
The client didn't know there was a requirement.
Oh yeah.
The customer knew there was a requirement. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because many times, this is the point I want to make, and it's a very important point. Many times, people who operate in their environment are in a state of what I call unconscious incompetence. What that means is they don't know what they don't know.
Oh.
And then somebody outsider, like she was an actually user of veterinary services, right? And she asked herself, why is this experience so consistently subpar? And she double-clicked on it, and she talked to the technician, she talked to the practice manager, and then she went to the doctor himself and said, do you realize that your teams need a communication module to get them better communicating with each other? He said, I didn't know that. I talked to them fine.
Exactly. And many times, even the users, they assume that this is the way it happens, right? That you won't get the best possible experience, so they have given up their hopes and they have accepted reality as it is.
There is a phrase for that. It's called inuring the status quo. That
Right.
means people say this is how it works,
Exactly.
right? Like you call somebody and they put you on hold for 15 minutes. You never question it. This is how it is.
Exactly. Got
And
it.
so what you need to do when you are in a tough job market, especially those who are in a tight vertical, and when I say tight vertical, means those who are engaged in technology and those who are in the more senior range of their career path, like 40 plus, 50 plus, those kinds of age group. I'll give you another example, then I'll shift to the topic here. I have a client who is an Intel, right? He's a fairly senior executive. I know Intel has now announced 16,000 layoffs. And although he's not laid off, he thinks that he's not sure. You see what I'm saying? So what he decided to do was he tried to find, working with his wife, where the market is that they could work with, that they feel attached to. And they found in the geography they are in that the childcare market was very ill-served because a lot of working parents didn't have childcare. There are a lot of young couples with children that they couldn't work as a couple because the child, you see what I'm saying? And he found out, and he got some certification in childcare. His wife also is a nurse. And he applied to the state government for a grant because he wrote a compelling proposal. And just about 6 months ago, he got $1 million grant from the state of California, childcare centers at their expense while he is holding the job.
Wow.
Yeah. And now he wants to create a franchise around it, and it will be many times more than he makes as a salary. And he can then leave the company and do that. You see what I'm saying? This is another example of my client that I worked with him, develop this concept. And this is just 2 use cases. I can spend all hour talking about different use cases.
Got it. Also inherent in what you said is the nature of change in the job market itself. That try to look out for side hustles as much as possible, right? Because many times side hustles or entrepreneur idea or project can be your next career in many ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now it doesn't apply to people outside the United States, but I'll tell you what's available in the United States. The Department of Labor has a handbook called Occupational Outlook Handbook, OAW, I think. Yeah, Outlook, OOW, OOH. And if you go to dol.gov and go to Occupational Outlook Handbook, you will see all possible jobs. There are 15 million job categories, or 16 million, are cataloged in that book. And that book talks about which job categories have prospects for the next 10 to 15 years. How many people participate in that job category? What are the salaries? What are the trends? It's an amazing resource. It's only for the US labor market, but it's available. So those who are of your clients, of audience members who are in the US, can go to the Occupational Outlook Handbook and pick a category and say, okay, what's going to happen to this category over the next, and they will tell you that. And then you can say that, if there is a paucity of that kind of expertise for the next 10, 15 years, maybe I'll have 10, 15 years of good growth prospect in that particular job category. So that's another resource that's really available to the US people.
Great. Can we shift gear now, Dilip, and maybe do a deep dive a couple of the tips which you mentioned? For example, can you talk something more about targeting or prospecting, learning how to prospect? That would be really great.
So good. That's a good point. Let's get back to the 5 tips you said. I'll repeat the 5 again. First, show your differentiation. Don't say you're better, but you're different. That's the first one. The second one is target selected companies with research. I'll talk about that. The third one is how to learn and do prospecting. We'll talk about that. The fourth one is how to leverage your networking. And the fifth one is how to get the right landing, not focus so much on title and salary. So those are the 5 items laid out at the beginning of the show. So I'll go through one of them. Now, the ones you said was how to learn prospecting. Is that the one you just asked me?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. So let's talk about that's number 3. So prospecting has to do with identifying a target company, identifying their pain point, and then writing to somebody at a very high level, like a CEO, for example, or a president, or a managing director, or somebody at the top of the company, and say that I know I've been researching your company, and my research shows that you're trying to penetrate the teen market or teenage market for females, and you've not been very successful. Here are the 3 reasons why that is possible. 1, 2, 3. You've done some research. And they say, and then say, I have a solution how you can address that, because in a similar situation during whatever, I was able to successfully penetrate this market for that age group, for that demographics. And if you're interested, let me know when we can talk. So you're now crafting this letter and sending it without your resume to the CEO or the MD or the president or whoever is really high in the company. And then if that interests them, they will say, gosh, what is the idea? Don't give them the idea in the letter. Tell them your past experience with such idea and say that if you want to talk more, let's discuss it. What I found that I've been doing this for 25 years now in my coaching career, and I'll give you an example that worked. In 2001, everybody in the Silicon Valley was laying off, including Apple. And one of my clients came to me with one of the Apple computers at the time, and he said, Dilip, this particular computer, I think it was G4, if I remember correctly, is basically unmaintainable. If it goes out on you, you basically throw out and get a new one. And I found a way to make this more maintainable and easily serviceable. And I have an idea that I would like to propose to Apple. So what we did was I said, come here to my office, show me how you take it apart, show me what you... And he came back and showed it. He was really excited about it. So we captured that in a letter and wrote to Steve Jobs. We sent a FedEx letter to Steve Jobs and said, 1 page that basically said, this particular version of a computer is unserviceable. I have an idea, and I wrote it for the client, and here is what you need to do to make it more service-friendly and longer lasting. We sent it FedEx. Within a day of that letter, Steve's secretary called my client and said, Mr. Jobs is ready. When Apple themselves itself was laying off people. So that letter, by the way, is in my book on page 295 in my first book, just to show that such a letter is really available for anybody to look at. And so the point I've done this with very senior people like Michael Dell, Meg Whitman, and many other people at the CEO level. And the success rate I have had with that is about 30%. In other words, if you research a company, send 3 or 4 letters, one of them will get you a call. That doesn't mean it'll get you a job, but it'll get you a call. And normally, if a call is successful, you go meet with them, and you end up resulting in a job that only you have. There is no competition anymore. You are the only one. You see what I'm saying?
Got it.
You're not competing with anybody.
Exactly. You have created a customized job for yourself. That's really relevant.
So let me tell you a actual use case that worked. This thing didn't work because this client was very nervous to meet Steve Jobs, and he didn't go to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs invited him, but he said, I'm not coming. Just to give an example. So the other example I want to give you is I have a client who came to me 5 years ago. He was 70 at that time, 73 years old, and he was a senior fellow at HP Labs. HP Labs is a big deal. You probably know that. HP Research and all that, right? And when they shrank their lab and laid off a lot of people, he was one of the people laid off. So he came to me and he said, Dilip, here I'm 73. I've never looked for a job. I don't think a job the type that I do is no longer available in the Silicon Valley because nobody does basic research anymore. But I don't want to hang up and retire because I have too much to offer. Very senior. I would say that if you did one more major invention, you would probably get a Nobel Prize, that caliber guy, right? So I said, you can apply for a job, but I think we can create a job for you based on what you have to offer. He has done tremendous amount of work in computation, communication, and information management. That's his niche, right? So what we did was we found out that there is a company very similar to, you know what Bell Labs was, right?
Yeah, Bell Labs
Yeah,
is well
Bell
known. Yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago. Bell Labs now is gone. But all of these telco companies, telecommunication companies, have formed a consortium like AT&T and Verizon and Comcast and others. And they pool their millions of dollars to fund long-term research at a company called Cable Labs. It's Bell Labs. And I think it's in Salt Lake City headquarters. So we decided to write to the CEO of Cable Labs and said that, look, if you're looking at research and technology horizons 5 years and 10 years hence, you need to be in the Silicon Valley. You're not in the Silicon Valley. How can you attract the kind of talent you need and the ethos you need, the spirit you need to do the kind of work you need to do? You can't be in Salt Lake City. You have to be in the Silicon Valley. And if you come to the Silicon Valley, we have a perfect candidate who can head that research. That's the letter we wrote to the CEO. And we proposed that this guy head the research. And he got that job, and he's head of research now in this lab, and he's 78 years old.
Wow. Great.
I can actually tell you his name because he wrote me a review. And have you heard the name Andrew Huberman? Do you know who that is?
Yeah, he's a famous guy.
Okay, that's his father. They're
Oh,
both.
wow. That's great. That's
they're both
amazing.
in fact, Bernardo Huberman, the senior guy, the father, he wrote me a recommendation after he landed that job because even he couldn't believe it.
Excellent.
Right? And so what I'm saying to you is that people limit their thinking by what they have done and what's in front of them or what they can't access in their mind. And what I'm saying is, if you learn the prospecting mindset, the world is infinite, basically.
Got it.
This is my 5th career. Each career that I changed to, that job did not exist. I called for that job and I captured it.
Got it. Excellent.
I think we talked about showcase your differentiator, not better, but different. I think that part was clear, right?
Yeah.
You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, prospecting was also very clear. So maybe leveraging networking and LinkedIn would be something which would be really interesting.
Okay. So target selected companies with research. That means find their pain point. That's what I can do. The third one is prospecting. We talked about that at length, right? Fourth is leverage networking. People normally get too hung up on LinkedIn as the only source of networking. And it is because it has billion plus members and there's a lot of exchange that occurs. There are like 6-7 million professional groups on LinkedIn. So all of that is great, but there is a lot of noise on LinkedIn. And I don't mean in a bad way, but a lot of people constantly regurgitating the same content, same thing over and over again. So you don't know how you want to spend your time on LinkedIn, right? So the things I suggest you do is, first of all, make your profile, once again, using the differentiator concept, highly differentiated. Have your headshot, have a great headline, and have the about part very crisply, impactfully crafted so that when people read it, they go, wow, this guy, I want to talk to this person. So that's the first thing you want to do. The second thing you want to do on LinkedIn is you want to constantly post on reputable content and make some comments that are impactful. Don't just comment, write comments, but make some thoughtful comments, right? That's the second thing I would say. The third thing I would say, and it gets increasingly harder, is to comment on impactful blogs with impactful statements. And I'll give you an example of that. I have a client who was interested in applying for Amazon AWS. And for 2 years, he kept applying. He never got a response. Nobody called him and so forth. And one day he came to me and he said, one of the managers at AWS had just posted a blog on the cost reduction using cloud services. This was 5 years ago now. And it was a fairly well-written blog. So I said, why don't we write a comment after some research and make that comment stick, right? So we spent a day figuring out how to find an angle and make that comment work. The hiring manager, the blog writer, the manager read the comment. He called the recruiter and said, this guy is pretty savvy. Can you contact him and connect with me so that I can see if he's worthy of hiring? And then within a few days, the recruiter called him and he got connected. So you see how that worked?
Correct.
So resume didn't work for him, but a great comment got his attention. So that's the way.
Right.
The next way and the final way to do it is to write blogs. And it's much harder to write a blog. Takes time, takes research and all of that. Or comment on somebody's blog who is very reputable or somebody who has a good standing. And then you get attention that way. So that's the LinkedIn part. That's just the LinkedIn part. But the other part, which you should not forget, is the actual, what I call social networking, handshaking, going to an event, making yourself known, once again, differentiating yourself, presenting something, talking about something, getting their attention. That's how you do it.
Got it. And also another thought which came to my mind is many a times a resume is a historical document, right? It's rooted in past, whereas you want to do something in the future. So it's important to refine your objectives and what you want to do, right? As the famous saying goes, go where the puck goes, not where it has been.
And that's exactly the point. In the way I write my resume design, going back 25 years, my resume is not about yesterday, it's about tomorrow. And I have figured out a way to do that, including highlighting the genius that you bring to the party. And that's basically my differentiator.
Got it. Also, you mentioned your last point was how do you advance your career without getting focused on the next title or role? Can you throw some light on that as well?
So we have what, 2 minutes left?
Around 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay, we can do it 3 minutes. Okay, so here's what happens. This is, people get hung up on this. They say, I lost my job as a director, so my next job has to be at least a director or a senior director. Otherwise, it looks bad on my resume. This is the paradigm that people hold in their head. And so what I tell them to do is don't get hung up on title and salary, but focus more on responsibility and where it'll take you. That's a different mindset. So if you have a bigger responsibility ambit or reach in your next job, but the title is now senior manager and not a director, in the resume for that job, after you complete that job, or even during having that job, is to focus and amplify on the responsibilities by saying that instead of managing as a director 20 team members, I am managing 6 different teams in 8 different countries, 8 different geographies. And with that, I have delivered the following without getting anything to the market late.
Got it.
How do you do that? Because when you have 5, 6, 7 countries, very difficult to synchronize all the team activities and so forth. So you see how it shifts your skill set from just managing 20 people in one roof under one, basically geography, to managing. That's where it's headed now, right? That's where things are in global marketplace.
Got it.
So you need to see where the shifts are taking place and try to capture that without focusing on the title and without focusing on the salary. And about the salary, let's say they give you 20% less salary, right? You say to them that, okay, I'll come down one title and I'll take 20% less. But before you take on the job, or as you take on the job, you say, here is what I'm going to deliver to you at the end of the first year, because I bring a fairly rich resume, as you can see from my work that I will do for you next year. And if I deliver that to you, I would like to make my salary match my previous salary that I came from. And I've tried this many times with my clients who came down in salary, and 75 to 80% of the time, they're able to get that at the end of the first year.
Got it. Because essentially at the heart of all this discussion is companies or the hiring manager wants to know what can you do for me. That's
exactly. And show me. Don't tell
Exactly.
me.
Show me. Exactly. Great. Thanks. This really gives a great perspective. And thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in. Do subscribe, share, and like this podcast. Consider giving it a 5-star rating if you like the content. Bye for now. Talk to you soon.